Alright, we're back. We're going to start working on getting this rear tire off of the bike, which is our next step. And so the first thing we're going to do is right down here there's the brake cable, and it's like a little wing nut on the back there. And we're going to take that wing nut off, and that'll release the brake cable off of the brake drum back here. And then we're going to take this nut off on this side and push the tire forward, and we should be able to get the chain off. Just a quick little note, we were taking off the nut over here on this side, and just it's a good idea to keep these pieces in order. This is the adjustment bracket for adjusting your rear tire so that your chain is at the proper tension. So you want to make sure that these pieces are all in the right order here. And you can see there's a washer here, and hold that washer, and then there's a that bracket, and then another retaining piece. Okay, we're good to go. So we're going to take off the chain guard here, and we're going to slide the tire forward a little bit and remove this chain. Okay, we got the rear tire off. It went off pretty easily. When we pulled the back end off here, you can see the other side also has an adjuster for adjusting the tire tension, or basically the chain tension on the bike. And the other side here is pretty self-explanatory. We pulled it off, and we're going to check the bearings in the back end here, make sure they're in good shape. And we put that wing nut back on the brake cable so we don't lose it. That's it. Okay, we had to do a little research to figure out how we're going to take this swing arm off and the steps we're going to have to go through. There's a secondary little mud guard here that we can take off, and basically this mud guard is just kind of clipped on there, so you can just pull it right off. Set that over there. And that'll expose the linkage on the top here that's holding the swing arm on. Then there's a little bracket chain guard that needs to come off here, and these are 10mm bolts down here, and then over on this side over here are 12mm bolts, and we're going to take this bracket so we can get the chain off of the swing arm and be able to pull the swing arm up and away. The way we're going to have to loosen the swing arm is there's a couple bolts that have to be undone in order to get it off. We have this bolt here. We haven't determined what the size is yet. Then down below the swing arm there's a bolt right there. We're going to have to undo that one. And then this is called the pivot arm bolt. We're going to have to remove that bolt as well, and then the swing arm should come out. So we're gonna go after it and see what happens. Okay, we're about ready to drop the swing arm off of here. One thing that I forgot to mention is this brake cable here. You have to remove it from this holder right here off of the swing arm, and you can see we've taken the guard off of here that holds the chain guide right here has been removed. This bolt up here was quite a challenge. Had to use my impact gun to get that off. That was a 17mm, and we got that bolt out of there. And then the one that was underneath that I showed you, that was a 14mm, and we removed that one as well. The pivot arm bolt, which we still haven't taken out because I wanted to show you guys this, is this side. The nut on here was a 22mm, and on the other side the bolt head was a 19mm. So we're going to pound it out of there and drop the swing arm off. It should come right out. Okay, we got the swing arm off the bike. As you can see, here's the bottom of the shock and the linkages that are connected to it. Pulling the swing arm out was a little bit of a challenge. The seals on both sides of the swing arm were kind of stuck in there. We ended up having to pry it out, and you can kind of see the pry marks on the engine block there, where I had to get a pry bar in there to pry that swing arm loose. It came out once we got it broke loose, and we had to pound out the the axle that was holding it, it's called the pivot arm axle, so we pulled that, had to pound that out, and then pry the swing arm out of the bike. Here, I'll show you what the swing arm looks like out of the bike. Here's the swing arm. You can see the seals on both sides. There's a seal, and we're going to replace those when we rebuild this bike. So there you go. We're done with the swing arm. We're going to get the shock off the bike now. Okay, it's a gas shock on this bike, so we had to get the canister out of the way, and it's got a little retaining bracket right here that holds it in place. So we just loosened that bracket and slid the canister up, and we're going to lay that on top here out of the way. And then there is a bolt that we already undid the nut from, and we're going to pound that through there and take the shock off. It should come right out. Okay, we're back. We've been working on the bike a little bit, getting some of the stuff that isn't the most fun done. The fenders were extremely oxidized, and what I've found from other videos I've been watching on the internet is there's various ways you could go about doing this and restoring these fenders. And what I'm going to do is I've been using a scraper and basically scraping the oxidation off of the fender, and then after I scrape the heavy oxidation off here, I'll show you a little bit of how that goes. It comes off pretty simple. It scrapes it right off, and once you get that crusty layer off of the fender, then you take sandpaper and sand the fender down, and after you get it sanded down, then take a buffing wheel like I have right here on my drill and some buffing compound and buff the plastic back to new. It's not that hard, it's just a lot of work. Hello everybody, we're at a stage now where we're going to rebuild the forks on the bike, and the first step here is to clean them off first. They were really nasty with oil because they've been leaking really bad, but what we did is right now we're going to remove this retaining clasp right here to get this ripped boot off of there. We're just going to throw that boot away and get another boot. So we're going to get the boot off of there, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay everybody, we got the boot off of the fork right now, so there's the dust seal that keeps everything from getting nasty. And then on the bottom of the fork here, there is a damper rod retaining bolt that holds the damper rod in its place inside the fork, and I believe on this fork that is the drain plug for the oil. So we're gonna undo that bolt, and I'll let you know what size it is when we get it undone, and we'll see if that drains the oil out of the fork. Okay, we are getting the oil out of the fork, so that side bolt was correct in getting the oil out of the fork, and that was a 10 millimeter. And as you can see, he's pumping the fork to get the residual oil out of it. No, don't put your hand down there, just pump the fork. Okay, and once we get the rest of the oil out of the fork, we're going to take that damper rod bolt out. Okay, we got the damper rod bolt loose. A little bit of a challenge. I did not have a metric set of Allen screws like this. These are just standard, and wasn't going to work for this. Everything's metric, so I ended up having to use a regular Allen wrench, and it got it done. But now that it's loose, we're going to take that out the rest of the way and get that damper rod out of there. Okay, we got the damper rod bolt out. It was a little bit of a challenge, but got it out. And as you can see, there's a little copper washer on that, and there's a copper washer on the drain plug. And here's the one we haven't taken apart yet. So there's the drain plug on the side, and then the damper rod bolt is right inside here. We found after we took the damper rod bolt out and loosened the dust cover on the top of the shock, and we just used a flathead screwdriver right here and gently pried it loose, and once that dust cover was popped loose, more oil was wanting to drain out of the fork, so we're letting it sit here a minute to get the residual oil out. And once we do that, we're going to show you how to get the seal out of this fork. We'll take the dust cover off and then get that seal out of there. Okay, we're going to get the fork seals out now, and here's the dust seal, which we broke loose with a little screwdriver right here. And I'm just going to slide this up off of the forks, and there it is. There's the dust seal. I'll set it right there. Now we're going to use the fork itself like a kind of a hammer to pull that seal out. So kind of work that seal out of the fork. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? There's a snap ring inside here. We got to get that out first. So let's get the snap ring out. All right, pause it for a second. As you can see, I got the snap ring that holds that oil seal inside the fork. I totally spaced it when I was trying to get it out earlier, but basically you take a pair of snap ring pliers, you know, like the ones I have here. You put them down inside here and squeeze them together and wiggle that snap ring out of its area there. So got the snap ring out. Now we're going to get the oil seal out of the fork, and I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, we're going to get the oil seal out, and basically use the fork shaft as a hammer to pull it out. So we're going to whap it a few times. And all right, got it on out of there. All right, I'll clean this up, and you can see here, here's the fork oil seal and the bushing, and then there's another bushing on here, but that's basic parts there. So we're going to get all this cleaned up, and we'll get back to you in the next part. Well, hello everybody, we're back. We kind of got the bike suspended from the shop ceiling to make it a little easier to do some of this stuff, not having anything underneath it. And we're at a point where we're going to want to remove the engine from the frame, because we're going to get the frame powder coated so it looks like it's brand new, which it will kind of be brand new when we're done with it. But what we're going to do here is one of the first steps we're going to do is get some of this stuff off of the motor so we can get it out. We're going to take the shifter lever off. As you can see, there's one bolt holding the shifter lever, and it's a 10 millimeter, and we're going to get that thing off. We're going to just loosen it up and pull it right off. Okay, we got the nut off, and now we're wiggling the lever off. You basically just wiggle it back and forth and pull it off of the shaft, and there you go. It's been taken off, and the shaft is splined, and you know, kind of have a general idea of where you're going to have it when you put it back on again. But you'll have to see what works best for your foot. So, well, we got that off, so we're going to move on to the next step. We're going to come over, actually, we're going to take this cover off here first, which guards the chain sprocket. So we're going to take these two bolts off. There's one bolt right there, and then there's one right down below it, and we're going to take those off, and those are also 10 millimeter to get at that chain sprocket. Okay, well, we got the sprocket cover off, and what we did is we put the bolts back in their spot where they came out from. And some of the bolts on the motor are going to be of different lengths, even though it's for the same cover or something like that. These in particular were the same size, so we still put them in the locations where they came out of, and we may need to take them out later, but for now we're leaving them in there. And what we're going to do is get the chain here off of the sprocket, and for right now we're going to leave the sprocket on there. We probably are going to be changing that out. I'm sure it's worn, but we're going to get the chain off and move on to the next step. Alright, well, we found when we were trying to get the chain off that there isn't enough room to just take the chain off of the sprocket. So we're going to remove the sprocket to get the chain off. And there's two bolts that are holding the keeper to keep that sprocket in place on there. It's going to have to be replaced anyway, so we're going to take that off of the motor and pull the sprocket off. And those two bolts are 10 millimeter. We're going to get those bolts off and then slide the sprocket off. Okay, we're going to remove the back brake lever. You can see here's the back brake lever, and this is where it pivots right here. And here's the cable itself. I ended up having to bend this piece back to normal because it looked like it had been hit by a rock or the bike fell down or something, and there was no way we were going to get this out. So bent that back where it needed to go. And then on this side here, it's held on by a cotter pin, and you can see the cotter pin right there. And I've already kind of loosened it up, so I'm going to pull that cotter pin out. And then there's a little washer that's holding it in place. Take that out, and now we can just push the brake lever off. And we're going to get that off, and then we'll get back.
I know that's a back-to-back weekend, but I want to go to that.
Okay, we got the brake lever off, and it was a little bit of a challenge. As you can see right here, the spring that was holding it in place, make sure you can recognize the orientation of this thing before you remove it. And in order to get the brake cable off of this thing, you have to be able to pivot the arm all the way up in order to slide the cable out of it. So, and it slides down inside this groove as well. You can't just pull it out, it has to slide down through it. So in order to even pull this out of this area here, it has to be disconnected from the lever. So now that we've got the lever out and